us today for the special feature on Mogotes Metals is Stephen Nano. Stephen, how are you doing?
Really well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to be speaking to you. So we're going to be talking about your Filo Sur project here. That's, of course, your project that you've been pretty active on recently. Lots of news going on with what's been going on over there. And this it's a pretty prolific copper-gold district, isn't it?
Truly spectacular. From a perspective of someone that's worked in the Andes now for nearly 30 years. The discovery rate and the clustering of these large deposits, in particular in this Vicuña section of the belt, is really exciting.
Well, you acquired extra land, didn't you, recently, just earlier in the year? You actually took on some further licenses there. So could you just perhaps introduce the general area to us and what's so prospective about it from your point of view?
Yeah, so look, the Filo Sur Project sits within the Vicuña district, which is the centre of attention for discoveries in the Middle Miocene age belt in the Chilean and Andean Cordillera. And I guess what's so exciting about this part is that it sits between two well-known belts of mineralisation, the Maricunga section of the belt to the north, and the Alindio belt to the south. And for a long time, this segment was thought to be a non-productive area. There weren't any deposits to be discovered. But certainly, Filo Corp and NGEx have absolutely proved that to be wrong. There's now 4 substantial deposits in that section of the belt. We're hoping to make it 5 in the near term.
Right. Okay. So it was thought before to contain no mineral at all. What was the catalyst moment when companies realised there was actually something of value there?
Just really sensible, well-directed, long-term exploration from NGEx.
Okay.
Who in a way is the parent company from where Filo Corp was spun out from. And they, made the first discovery through that area, I guess, called the Los Helados porphyry deposit that's still within NGEx. And soon after that, the discoveries and the extension of what now has become the Filo del Sol Aurora deposit through there. NGEx has most recently been discovering and I guess announcing a string of truly spectacular copper gold discoveries in the Lunahuasi district as well. So, that's an impressive sort of 20-kilometre strike length of that arc, and we're really the only junior that can truly claim to be directly on strike for that.
Okay.
I can climb the hills on our ground and look directly at the drill rigs turning at Filo. Really, very, very close and directly on strike for that large mineral deposit.
And is this by design, or is this by luck, or by chance? Because, of course, gold and copper, to be fair, at the moment, both commodities performing very well. So is this all part of the grand plan, or were you right place, right time?
No, it was a deliberate, strategy to acquire ground and build that ground right on strike for that belt. The gold and copper have been, I guess, relatively strong now for quite a long time, and certainly projections for copper still remain very, very strong, and gold is at all-time highs now as well.
Yeah.
So, those kind of metal cycles, the timing of them is always difficult to predict, but long-term demand was clear that this upturn would happen, and is really important to us right now when we're at that early exploration stage.
Sure. Okay. So, what was it that drew you to the project in the first instance? Was it the neurology, as you've mentioned? We've just got a map up now of the bigger picture of the area.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. Geology doesn't stop at claim boundaries or country borders. And so it was very clear from some fairly basic analysis and satellite imagery interpretation that the ground there that's been held by two different companies now for around about 20 years, was right on trend and significantly underexplored. What I mean by that is that there'd been no substantial systematic exploration on these properties now for over a decade, no drilling for over a decade. And the importance of that is twofold. One is, of course, that Filo del Sol really wasn't discovered, and particularly the high-grade Aurora section, until a few years ago. And of course, that changes everything, the way you explore and the way you think about things. But also in that 10 years, there's been a substantial step forward in exploration technologies that we can throw at these things to look for covered deposits. And that's what we're trying to do in that belt is we can see where the belt goes. Very soon have our own geochron or age dating to confirm what we can see geologically and geochemically, that we're an extension of that district. It was very clear that alteration system from a satellite imagery that we had continued into that ground, and systematically went out to acquire it. You mentioned that early recent acquisition made. You can see that on the map there. Is that newly optioned claims there that we have on the figure in white, directly on strike for Filo, and you can see I've highlighted there in the figure the last press release they put out for BHP and Lundin completed that $4.5 billion transaction. It's located about 1 kilometre north of our property boundary. That's the most southerly hole that they've drilled on trend. So that system is, definitively open to the south and trending straight for our ground. We're very happy to have it. But again, that ground that we acquired in mid-January there was not an accident. Not something that we just decided to do on a whim. We've been working on a transaction to put that option agreement in place for over 2 years. So well before we listed Mogotes on the TSXV, where we're negotiating with the underlying property owners because we understood its significance and because we wanted that to complete that picture, so we had full extension of that southerly projection of the belt.
So a couple of questions then. So how do you know that the trend continues? So the trend is as we highlighted in yellow, isn't it? As it goes sort of around and down to the south and then back up to the north. So first of all, how do you know the trend continues? And secondly, how were you able to acquire that land if it is so prospective?
Well, I'll answer the last part of your question first, and it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay, we could see what was happening there, and we knew that ground was really significant. The companies that had held the ground before on the Argentine side had a couple of joint ventures in, had done some work themselves. They tested what were the obvious outcropping targets, but hadn't thrown the kind of exploration technologies and exploration approach that we have at it now to define what you can see there in red are our 9 exploration targets. What was really significant for us is that we acquired WellView 3 satellite imagery and processed that up. We could see the extension of the alteration systems that host these deposits coming onto that ground. We also did a lot of surface geochemistry, large-scale soil grids and rock chip sampling of our own, and then recovered data from the Filo 43101, gridded that soil copper up importantly at the same thematic breaks. We could simply see the extension of their copper anomalies into our ground. So just very good, basic, systematic, science-driven exploration, and we could just definitively demonstrate it. Well, what you also see kind of hinted at there as well is that there's a bit of a deflection in the arc on our property, and that's one of those key things that I've been living and working here for a very long time. In fact, I've founded and listed other companies that are exploring in the belt now. In fact, drilling some of my projects at the moment. And I've learned over long periods of time that the north-south mineral belt and the intersection with these big trans-origin faults, and you can see that the drainage is there on that northwest orientation. It's following a big crustal scale fault called the Macho and Huerto, and where that structure intersects the arc here and in many places up along that arc is where these big deposits are located. So not only was it just simply the projection of the alteration and the copper there, we had a really important structural setting that said, hey, this is a really significant place to go.
Okay. So is it fair to say you saw it first? Would the other operators in the area desire to have the land, do you think?
What we have done now with the exploration makes its prospectivity very obvious.
Okay.
It's not always that way when you start. And I guess other companies will have looked at this ground and looked at the old data and seen what was there. The historic targets had been drilled. There's still very significant intersections in that historic drilling that we will one day follow up. But we did a first principles district scale exploration approach, large scale geochem, remapped all the geology. As I mentioned before, the WorldView 3 alteration processing, and now we've covered a large part of the property with leading edge geophysical technology. So we not only have a good understanding of the surface geology and geochemistry, but a predictive three-dimensional geophysical model of what's happening under at depth. And that's made these targets obvious. It's the coincidence of all of those factors there that have led me to select those target areas where we're seeing the characteristics of large mineral systems, alteration, geochemistry, geochemical, and geophysical signatures that say, hey, there's potential here for a big system.
Okay. Well, I do want to come on to the geological model in a moment and talk about the targeting. But before we get into that, I wonder if we can just talk a little bit about what it's like to operate in that area, because it doesn't look like the most hospitable terrain to be operating in. So what's it like getting on the site? What's access, infrastructure like, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Look, absolutely true. This is the spine of the Andes. It's high altitude. It's seasonal exploration. It's very challenging, and I love it. Okay, but access. Look, one of the very first things that Mogotes did when we came in onto the property was rehabilitate all of the existing tracks and build approximately 30 kilometres of new tracks on the Argentine side. So we have really good access throughout the project. That's not something that a junior usually does, but the board have sort of backed this district scale approach that we're pursuing, and we needed that access. So access from the Argentine side, we drive up along the development road now that we're BHP and Lundin are developing Jose Maria, a porphyry system just to the north of us, and then access straight into our project. And we have really good access from the Argentine side. Again, as you flagged at the beginning of the program, we've just acquired those newly optioned claims in Chile, or an option to acquire them. And we're accessing a section by the existing roads there. In fact, the roads that Filo Corp used to access Filo del Sol, and other roads in there to explore on that side. Exploration on the Chilean side, and so access is much earlier stage, but we're getting everywhere we need to get to, and we can operate. The other part of this story, which is really important for listeners or people that are interested in Mogotes to understand, is that over a decade ago, the Chilean and Argentine governments recognised that there were a string of significant copper gold deposits developed along the border region, And as we started with, the geology doesn't stop at country borders or claim boundaries. Often they straddled half in Chile, half in Argentina, or some other proportion. So they developed a bilateral accord to allow development of these really large systems. It's very unusual for a junior company to apply for that, but we have, and we're well advanced now on having that accord in place from Mogotes, which will allow us to drive, rigs or bring equipment from either side of the border and just crisscross backwards and forwards across the border to explore and if successful, develop that project. Okay. So, we're putting everything in place here to maximise our chance of success, and if successful, to be able to move this thing forward quickly.
Good. And it's nice to hear about that sort of partnership, if you like, agreement with Chile and Argentina there. So generally, would you say the area is pretty amenable to permitting, working with the government for permits, licenses, etc.?
Yeah, look, both countries have, modern environmental and mining legislation. So there are proper safeguards and processes in place that we have to observe. But applications for drill permits are very quick. We're on the Argentine side. We're in San Juan, which is probably one of the two most mining-friendly places in Argentina. I think San Juan's actually at the top of the Fraser Institute's ranking as a mining-friendly jurisdiction. And of course, Chile produces something around 40% of the world's copper, so its economy is substantially underpinned by mining. So both of them have very clear processes in place. Obviously, following a proper process and legislation is critical, but it's very achievable, and we'll be able to. We have drilled on the Argentine side and got permitting in place very, very quickly, and can achieve that again as we need to for the future drill program.
Okay, good. Well, let's just talk about the project and exactly what's been going on. So I think what we're looking at here is is it you call them breccias and stockworks?
Yeah. I know geology. Hey,
geology. Yeah, indeed.
I'm salivating just looking at these rocks. They're so sexy. So these are photos from those newly acquired claims in Chile. As we announced on the 15th of January, we put that agreement in place, and we just mobilised people in there straight away because, again, we could see from our work with satellite imagery that the alteration system from Filo projected straight into this area. And also our work on the Argentine side showed that the geochemistry and the geophysics was open straight into here. So I had pretty, high hopes that we would see some, sexy looking geology, and we sure did. As soon as the guys were in, they were straight into seeing these kind of rocks. Now, what we're seeing here is advanced argillic alteration, so the kind of alteration that you normally see associated with high sulfidation copper and gold systems. And this geology projects straight in from the north. Remember that Filo Corp drill hole that I pointed out on the map that you had up there. So 1 kilometre to the north of this, there was over 600 metre intersection from 22 metres at surface of gold and copper mineralisation, and that is directly open onto this ground. Here's the kind of geology that we were really hoping to see. Big scale breccias, intense advanced argillic alteration, with vuggy silica, with quartz alunite, and importantly, what you're seeing in those photos A3 and A4 are clasts of porphyry mineralisation that the breccia is punched up from depth. It's brought up pieces of the rock from below, and some of those pieces are showing we've got porphyry at depth, and it's got the kind of quartz veining that you want to see in a porphyry. So these A and B style veins are the kind of veins that can carry the copper and gold mineralisation. Now, what happens with the fluids here, they're really, that generate these breccias, they strip all the copper out as they're moving them around, but the gold and other trace elements will stay behind. And we're waiting for the assay results from this and other, really nice looking geology that teams have been sampling, those newly acquired claims in Chile. But look, what we saw there was definitely what we wanted to see. And so pretty quickly after the field photos came in, we mobilized in a geophysical crew out of Chile that we used to do all of the work on the Argentine side. So 27th of March was the date that we mobilized them in. We have a very large scale active geophysics program now going on this ground. And importantly, it's the same technology that we've used on both sides of the border, same company. So we're going to be able to take the data sets from both sides now and marry them into one 3D model for the project. And I said earlier in the interview, we can see big geophysical anomalies that are open into this ground from our data in Argentina. So the Meseta target, which is right on the Filo Corp property boundary, and the Cumbre target were open directly into this ground. So we have, again, well justified expectations here that we'll be seeing some significant anomalies in that geophysics that'll turn into drill targets.
So are you seeing a couple of things here then? Are you seeing the porphyry, which we can see labeled there in photo A3 and A4, but also this high sulfidation epithermal, this HSE that you talk about, which is what Filo del Sol has?
Exactly. And what we're seeing here is the same kind of overprinting history now. To the north in Filo, and beautiful scientific articles being published on this, they've been able to demonstrate that the same system that started as a porphyry at depth and had an epithermal system at surface has collapsed down on itself and overprinted it, telescoped. Okay, now you need a lot of data, a lot of alteration dates and stuff to be able to prove that that's happened from the same system. That's when it's telescoping, it's when it's the same system overprinting itself. We don't have those dates yet to show that, but I can see in the rocks that process is happening. And what we're seeing here is evidence, as you pointed out, of a porphyry at depth. We don't know the grade of that porphyry yet. And we're also seeing that advanced argillic alteration that you see with the high sulfidation system. So definitely the same process happening, and certainly lots of metal moving around from the Argentine side of the systems that we have. Lots of copper, lots of gold moving around in this system. So we're seeing same processes. We believe the same age. We'll, as I said, we'll get our own dates coming through later in the year that'll hopefully confirm that. But certainly all of the picture here is what we're seeing to the north in the Filo Corp ground, high sulfidation, overprint on a porphyry style system.
Okay, and what is it that you need to make a mine? Do you need to find the porphyry? That helps.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Look, both in the MDS and particularly in this section in the Miocene belt, there are both porphyry and epithermal systems that are economic and produce world-class mines. What's different, or what's exciting about what's happening at Filo del Sol on our northern property boundary is that both of these things have very large-scale concentrations of metal. And I'm being cautious to use the term economic because obviously you have to demonstrate you can mine it the grades that they have, and that's processes in train with BHP and Lundin now. But both the high sulfidation and the porphyry system are very, very well mineralized, and that's an exciting district to be in. Yeah,
okay.
So that's why we're here, and you can see in that little inset in that figure that you've just popped up there, all of the Filo drilling projected to surface, all those bright pink things that are encompassed in that green trace, which I've digitized in. That's the overall outline of the Filo mineralization. You can see it's directly open to the south onto our targets, Meseta and Cumbre. And then the long section there shows you all of the drilling that defines the sub-horizontal Filo del Sol oxide and supergene blanket there. And underlying that really high-grade Aurora zone, which is the cause of the porphyry that's brought that metal in. So that's open directly down to the south towards us, and you can see that little gap there, 1.2 kilometres. I know that you can see 2 drill holes in that gap, but they're off the trend if you look on the plan view there. So that's definitely untested to the south onto our ground. And now we're seeing those photos that you just showed were from that Meseta prospect. We're seeing all of the breccias and the advanced angelic alteration, and we hope to be able to demonstrate very soon the geochemistry and the geophysics extending into the ground. And that's what you can see in the long section again underneath Meseta and under Cumbre are those big geophysical anomalies that open into that newly optioned claim.
Yeah, so that bit in the middle, that white bit, that's your newly optioned area. That's 1,300 hectares that was announced just recently, I think.
Correct. We announced the transaction or the option agreement on the 15th of January. So news release, it's there on our website, and we were on the ground straight away. So look, the pieces of this story look super encouraging from an exploration perspective. Seeing that cross section there, the BB cross section. That goes straight from our ground where we have our geophysical anomalies and some gold, silver, and epithermal pathfinders in our rock chips there. You can see that silica structure straight over into that nearly optioned claims, and we'll be filling in that blank part of the picture there. As we speak. Yeah.
Why is it blank right now? Is it because you can't report it or you don't have data?
We're collecting that information now.
You're collecting the information.
The geophysics teams are in on the ground surveying those lines as we speak.
So effectively, if we're looking at the right of the picture here, so all of those drill holes are historic drill holes, and you're now effectively moving to the left here and going to fill in that main gap.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the section on the top of the page, it's a long section, and that's going from Filo in the north to our ground in the south. There are no drill holes in Meseta. It's a brand new target.
Right.
And the same for Cumbre, brand new target that we've identified from our work. Any ground drill holes on our ground here are outside of these targets. In fact, the majority of our targets have never had any drilling here because they're brand new targets that we've defined. So all the drilling you see there on the right-hand side is Filo.
Is Filo. Yeah, right. Okay. So what you just described then effectively with the porphyry and then the epithermal on top there, that's what we can effectively see in that lower left picture there, and it needs to be filled in. So the top is the HSE and the big red and sort of magenta is your porphyry target.
Yeah. So I'm just going to be, cautious here and say that in a way that's okay. The alteration and the geochemistry are consistent with a high sulfidation epithermal deposit. We're seeing bony silica with gold in it. Geophysical anomaly could be indicating that that's present at under the surface there, which is that blue area, because these high sulfidation epithermal structure systems move a lot of silica around, strip everything else out of the rock except the silica as well. You get very, very resistive rocks, and that's what that blue means. But underlying that, we have a very large conductive target, which is the purples and pinks with a chargeable halo. And that's the characteristic that you see in geophysics for a porphyry deposit. So it suggests we have a concealed porphyry deposit and high sulfidation style mineralization overlying it. They're targets. We have to drill them to show, to confirm whether they are or not. But man, all the signs are there, and particularly now with the new information that we have from Meseta and Cumbre, from those photos we were showing, everything's falling into place so far, and we're right on strike for a belt here, the Vicuña district, that's produced all of those substantial discoveries. We're seeing the right kind of signs at surface that we could well have one of these coupled, perhaps telescoped high sulfidation and porphyry systems together.
And what is the sort of the red mesh that we can see there on the picture?
It gets pretty messy here with all the different data types. So what the red mesh is the geophysics, it's the chargeability. What that measures is the capacity of the rock to hold a current when you put current into the ground. What it's actually, what we interpret it to mean, and what it classically means in the sense of if a geophysical survey over a porphyry is, it's the pyrite halo to the system. So all of the sulfide in the rock makes it chargeable, but as you can see as you're going there over here into that conductive zone, it's changing. It's both chargeable and conductive. Now, why do we like copper? Because it conducts electricity. So at least in theory, what this is mapping is the transition from the pyrite halo to a chalcopyrite bearing core. So that's the patterns that you look for in geophysics if you're searching for porphyries, and that's definitely the pattern that we're seeing there. We'll hopefully be drilling holes into that pretty damn soon to see what's there.
Okay.
With the other half of the picture. Okay.
Indeed. So the geophysics are lining up. You've done your trenching, which is lining up as well. So the next stage is, as you've said, to go and to drill. You've got drill ready targets shallow at around 300, 350 meters in depth. So are these targets currently mapped?
Yeah. So look, we'll have a lot of data now coming in over the next few months. We've had a really extensive trenching and rock chip sampling programs happening in Argentina, not just on these targets, but all the other ones. You'll see that we put out a news release recently on the Cruz del Sur and Stockwork Hills targets. They're out of the picture of what we're looking at here, but they're our first geochemical results from this season on two of our other targets that are very encouraging. Now have really good copper and gold geochemistry at surface above our geophysical targets. Thank you. That's exactly right. In that part of the world, we have a lot more rock chip data and trenching data coming in from the Argentine side and mapping, sampling over the next weeks and months from our other targets in Argentina. And on top of that, now we'll have all of the surface geochemistry and the geophysics coming from Chilean option claims as well to fill this in. So it's going to be a busy time for news flow. And of course, all of that information is being gathered so we can prioritize the targets to drill test them. And the key thing there is we have many targets, and that's a wonderful thing in exploration because it's de-risking the project. It gives us more chances to make a discovery. These aren't sort of, make-believe, wavy kind of maybe targets. These are targets that we've selected where we can see alteration and geochemistry of the surface, the right geology, and now these large-scale geophysical features, magnetics, electrical geophysics, MT, that all come together at these places saying, listen, there's something important here that you should be drill testing. Now, the challenge for us as a junior company is drilling's expensive and they're long holes because they're big targets. Some of them are deep, some of them are quite shallow targets, but, each one of these targets are very big targets, so they'll be long holes. And we can't afford to drill every single one of them straight away. So we're gathering all of the data from both the Chilean and the Argentine sides here to line these targets up and go, right, which ones of these are the very best? And where can we optimize our chance of success by drilling that, hole? Remember, some of these targets have, surface footprints of square kilometre in scale, and a drill hole is about that big. So it's still a challenge to put that first drill hole in and make a discovery. And we want to give ourselves the best chance with these drill holes. So we're getting everything together to line that up and drill the best ones.
And what are the factors that you have to sort of or look at, the data you have to analyze in order to make that priority? I mean, looking at the picture here from a layman's point of view, it'd be quite obvious to me to drill straight in the middle of those circles, but, I'm not a geologist.
And you see, that's the important thing about what we've done here, is that it is now clear where to drill, right? Because we have the data and because we've done the work, it's pretty obvious where you want to go. So, So these are two high priority drill targets for us now, because they have the right geophysical signatures, which is the magnetics there, which suggests there's an intrusive there that has magnetite in it, and those kind of intrusives can deliver metal. We have evidence of alteration at surface. We have lots of metal in the trenches at surface, and in some cases, not so much here because there's a lot of gravel cover on it. Lots of alteration at surface, but we're seeing little gaps in that, through the gravel cover, and what we've exposed in the trenches to say, look, there's a big system here. Now we've got this bit of data with that bit of data and that bit of data all together in one place. Yeah, it's obvious where to drill. The challenge for us is that we have 9 targets that are going to have these coincidences. Which are the ones that are most convincing, and which are the ones have the potential to be company makers if we drill holes into them? And that's what we now need to do with this kind of data on each of those targets, and potentially some new ones from the newly optioned claims.
Sure. Okay. So now I think we're seeing basically a top-down view, effectively, of what we saw the plan view before.
Yeah.
So the drilling season, when would you want to be drilling, and how many holes would you want to be drilling, and when do you need to have that decision made to get them turning?
Yeah, so remembering that we don't have the data sets for the other targets yet, so I can't give you number of meters yet. That will be planned during the coming months. Typically, the exploration season in this part of the world starts in October, so we'll be up in October.
Time.
Yep. So the results from the sampling geophysics are going to flow in now over weeks and months, and then we'll plan the holes and get back up in what will be Southern Hemisphere springtime. So October is the planned time, and at that stage we intend to be drilling multiple targets in this area.
Okay. I mean, what would success look like, or indeed what would failure look like? I mean, presumably if the drill core comes up fully mineralized, that's very successful. Could it also risk coming back and there's nothing there?
Look, I think it'd be very unusual if it's nothing, given the work that we've done. Okay, and you can actually see in this figure one drill hole that we drilled into this property in 2023, and you see there MOG drilling. FSDDH001, that's our first drill hole. What we did there was we drilled into a very big chargeability anomaly and hit broad intersections of intense alteration, lots of pyrite, and quite significant but not economic concentrations of metal. So what you do at that stage is what we've done here is you step back, you collect some more data, and you figure out whether you've drilled into the best part of the target and it's just not strongly mineralized, or you've drilled on the edge of it somewhere. Remembering what you can see on the right-hand panel there is in that sort of patch and stipple is the alluvial cover on this property, and then most of the hill where we drilled is still covered with glacial till as well. So we're drilling blind in there. And what we've done is we think we've drilled into that pyritic halo that I mentioned earlier in the other section that we're drilling. The fact that we've got, intersected 130 meters at 0.2 grams of gold with some anomalous zinc, and in fact there's copper and other metals with it as well, and grades of over 1.5 grams of gold and 1% of zinc, means we're in the halo of something that's moving a lot of metal around. Then we got more geophysics and the magnetics, which we actually got for free because that magnetics had been done by a previous explorer there and never been reported to the underlying property owner. Processed it all up with modern computing algorithms, and it showed us that magnetic pipe there that we saw on the cross-section. Went and did some trenching this season, and the trenching has shown us lots of copper and gold. And that's brought all of the pieces together and allowed us to go, okay, that first drill hole, didn't intersect economic mineralization, but it looks like it's actually in the halo. And so we haven't drilled the best part. But now with the new data sets, we can see where to drill, and that hole comes into context and is in fact an important vector for us to show where to drill the next hole. And it's a bit of a detective game like that with exploration. So swinging right back around to answer your question, if we drill some of these other targets and they don't immediately hit large ore grade intersections, which we are always aiming to do and want to do, they may in fact help us vector to where we need to go in the system. It is a detective process. I think we'll be very unlikely to drill no mineralization in the holes that we're drilling because of this work and because we're seeing all of those factors there. So we'll just see, but our objective here is to drill for discovery.
Drill for discovery. Yeah. Okay. And you might not be able to answer this question because it's maybe out of your remit in terms of, are you funded to do this? How much is it going to cost? Is it all costed for? Of course, you as a geologist, I imagine, is probably quite excited to get going. You've got to sort of temper that excitement to make sure that the money, as you say, because it's not cheap, is well spent and you're going for the right target. So I don't know if you can talk about funding these drilling targets, or maybe you can instead talk about the best way to approach it, to be really careful with the cash that the company has.
Yeah, so look, I can do both. I mean, I've founded and funded and run companies as CEO before, and I'm a director. Okay. I'm a director of Mogotes Metals. The quarterly report was just put out for the quarter ending in February, and that shows that we had $8 or $9 million in the bank. Sounds well funded for a junior, and it is if we're careful and sensible, but exploration in this part of the world is expensive. And so we're going to have to be very judicious with those funds and pick the right places to drill. And at the moment, we have the capital to drill some holes in our best targets. We'll see how many targets we have and how much drilling we want to do. That's really where the challenge will come here. Our costs, while they're high because of where we are in the world and we're drilling small amounts of meters, they're approximately 1,000 Canadian dollars now. That's an all-in cost and a true all-in cost. People, camp, geochemistry, water trucks, everything there. We know that Filo, because it has a much larger infrastructure and much bigger program in place, is drilling for substantially more than that per meter. We know that other juniors in the area are also their all-in drill costs are more than ours. So we're doing okay. We're doing again, trying to be very judicious with these funds. They're important. They're shareholders have invested in us to try and optimize the discovery chance for them. So we're going to be careful with the money. And we have funding to drill holes, but we just don't know how many holes yet, and that may change the way we look at our treasury.
Sure. Okay. And just given something you just commented on there about running public companies before, having lots of experience in this, how do you feel about what you're working on right now at the moment? Have you seen anything like it before in your career? Are you more excited about this project and other projects, to get a sense of your vast experience in this space?
Yeah, old greybeard. Look, I look at this as, one of the most exciting and probably the most exciting opportunity in my career. And I've definitely been involved in and contributed to a number of discoveries throughout my career. And it's, discovery is a drug. You always want more. This is super exciting to be, running a company that's exploring a project right next to world class. I think that's probably a fair way to describe the Filo, and Aurora discovery, and that the prospectivity of this belt is also world class. We're right there. I can literally go and see their drill rigs on our property boundary, and that doesn't happen very often to any geologist. And then to have the number of targets and bona fide, well constrained, data driven drill targets that we can see on this project again is something that you just don't see many times in a career, because it's often that you'll have a quality drill target, 1, 2 on a project, but not this many and not this close to what's clearly an extremely well mineralized belt for large porphyry and epithermal systems. So excited, really excited, and really looking forward to seeing this new data that could really add a whole new dimension to the Chilean side of the story.
Indeed. And just a final thought then on what you might say the investment cases for shareholders in Mogotes Metals, or indeed thinking about taking positions in this day and age. Instant gratification and that kind of shorter term mindset seems to be a bit more normal. So what are we going for here? Are we going for the excitement of getting the drills turning, or is there a bigger picture here to buy into? What the ultimate objective? Are you going to define a resource, or are you going to be attracting the majors, for example, like your neighbours, BHP or Lundin?
Look, the investment case, I think, here is pretty self-evident, right? Where our market cap at the moment is around 35 million Canadian dollars. It's a very solid and decent market cap, and given the challenges in the market, the fact that we're net positive ahead of our listing price is fantastic. But you step across the border there, and $4.5 billion acquisition for BHP and Lundin right on our property boundary, and then NGEX current market cap, $2.4 billion. I think the investment case is pretty clear. The potential for discovery, we've talked about that throughout the program. I genuinely look at these targets and go, yep, we've got real chance for discovery here on a world-class belt. So, those components there are self-evident. The thing that I step back and look at is, and try and think about is, what is BHP and Lundin? What doing? What's their game here? They're developing the Jose Maria deposit. It's a relatively small porphyry for BHP. It's 500 million tonnes. But the important thing there, I think, is that it's much lower altitude than Filo and Aurora, and so it's potentially a potential to be used as a processing facility for a future development at Filo, where you can bring the mineralisation in. I feel it's likely that they're looking at a long-term presence in this district here, which will be decades and decades of developing a string of deposits through there.
Right.
The thing that's important for us is as a junior is, look, we want to drill this and make a discovery. And if we are successful and shareholders support us, we'll go as far as we can towards defining a resource and potential future view for development. what happens there, if we make a discovery, is, future will tell. But, it's obviously, if you're in a district of this scale and we drill into economic mineralisation, our access to capital will change straight away. That can come from, the market, from, investors, funds that aren't in, and we're well supported by a number of really good quality funds that have deep pockets, or from large mining companies. So we have, all of that in front of us. Our most important thing to do right now is drill that hole and make that, intersection that demonstrates the potential for economic style mineralisation on this property.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time today, explaining all that to us. Stephen Nano, there, the Director and Technical Advisor at Mogotes Metals. Thank you very much.
Please. Thanks very much for your time and for listening to all my rambling stories. Okay. Thanks very much. Most appreciated.
Thanks, Stephen.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like, or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.